Welcome to the party. I'm not here right now, but I want you to listen very carefully. These guys are very funny, so pay attention. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve, my co-host is Pete.
Hello.
This episode we have a very special guest. It's Barry Nugent from Geek Syndicate.
Hello.
Hello. This episode...
I don't know if I'm a special guest, but...
Yeah, you're special.
Okay.
You're special.
Northampton's answer to Carl Weathers.
I'll take that, I would.
I'm like Black Superman, bitches.
Middle name Brixton.
No, just call me Tottenham, because that's where I'm from.
All right, yeah. Fair enough. Anyway, so this episode's going to go up the dogs. Anyway, but this episode we're talking about the 2018 film Creed 2, the most recent film in the Rocky franchise. And I'm going to put this out now already. But spoilers, by the way, for all of this film, as we always say. I think it's the last one ever in the Rocky franchise.
I think that it's supposed to be, but I'm not convinced it will be.
Oh, why? Pray tell, Pete. Tell us why.
Because quite often, Mr. Stallone, I love you, Mr. Stallone, he will retire a character and say he's never doing it again, a bit like Rambo, and then go, oh, do you know what, I'll do another one. So I think, or what I'd like to see personally, which is massively jumping ahead, is another Creed film, but not necessarily with Rocky in it.
Which I think if I kind of jumping ahead, but I kind of think given how the end of Creed 2 was set up, I think if we get any more Creed films, part of me thinks it will be without Rocky.
Me too.
Or it will be very, very minimal, not in the same way.
He won't be if they bring him back at all. It will be it won't be as the trainer. It'll be something else.
Or a gravestone.
Oh no! They can't do that. I don't think they'll ever actually kill him off.
I don't. Well, I mean, I think if they do it, what it will be is, I'd like to see them. I'm not saying I want to see them get rid of Rocky, but I'd like to see a Creed film stand on its own, and maybe it be Creed and the other trainer who was the son of Apollo Creed's trainer, Tony.
Yeah. Duke Jr.
Yeah.
It feels like, again, we are all jumping ahead, but it does feel like that. That's my takeaway, was that there might be a little bit of a gap, and then there'd probably be a third film. But
they're going to have to come up with a cracking storyline, because with this one and the first Creed film pulled heavily on the mythos, and they've kind of touched all of the bases. I think I agree with Barry that if they move forward with the Creed 3, it'll be a completely new story for a new generation that doesn't pull on the previous mythology, except for Adonis's own mythology. That's the only way they could do it.
Yeah.
Because this film has given lots of characters closure.
Yes.
So, and I guess Creed or Adonis himself is the one that you do feel there's more of a story to tell, but like you say, his own story. Be interesting to see what they do with the soundtrack, because kind of like the first Creed film was very heavily drawing on the Rocky stuff, but modernising it. Mm-hmm. This one kind of done a little bit less of that, and I guess, you almost can follow the soundtrack evolution in the same way, really.
I mean, because you mentioned soundtracks, kind of opened my door now. I think both soundtracks are phenomenal, and by the soundtracks I mean the original soundtrack, not we just get a bunch of people to do music.
Yeah, the scores are brilliant. Yeah,
the scores are brilliant, and I think what they've done, which I think is really clever, and the best example of it is the sort of two training montages they kind of have. There's one where Creed he's training for the first fight against Drago's son, where he gets a whooping. The music in that is really good, because they've got a rap track, but they've got like a kind of orchestral score going with it.
Yeah,
right.
And that's the kind of theme that sort of runs through it. Because then when they do the second training montage, it kind of managed to sort of evoke memories of the sort of classic sort of Getting Stronger track from Rocky. Has rap in it, has an orchestral score in it as well. So by the end of that, effectively Creed's got his own. Adonis has kind of got his own training music. So now when I hear that music, I'm like, this is Creed's training music. We've moved from Rocky, and that's the whole point of this film. It's about evolution, isn't it? It's about for all of the characters, and I think it's one of the. I'll go out on a limb and say it's one of the best. It's not even a. I suppose you call it a reboot, but I don't even know how to call reboot, side boot. I don't know, because it's something Dave and I've always said. A lot of the times when they do sequels to films and stuff, you take a character who. You look at Indiana Jones. I'm going off topic, but who is my favorite character of all time? But you get to sort of the last Indiana Jones film, which I know I'll get slayed, but I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. That's what I'll say. I enjoyed it. However, the Indiana Jones is a physical character, and as those films get on, he's obviously he can't throw down like he used to. He can't do the big
70s now.
He's in his 70s. He can't do those big stunt pieces and stuff like that. In a similar vein to Rocky, can't be Rocky in that way. No. So they found a way to have Rocky's character evolve to effectively become Mickey.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you've been able to bring in this other character that he can kind of mentor. And so many films kind of try to do that, but they sort of wimp out because they then put all the story focus onto that main character. So in this case, it would have been putting all the story focus onto Rocky. And they didn't do that in the first Creed film, which is why I think it was kind of 50-50, which is why I think Creed works so well. And then when we get to Creed 2, that then becomes, I'd probably say, like a kind of 70-30.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot of this film where Rocky isn't on screen. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of times when the story's moving on with him very much in the background. But I think, we said it's both the Creed films, they're a very modern take, but they go back to the heart of the original, more kind of dramatic-led first couple of Rocky films, more than the 3, 4, and 5 that went really kind of
Hollywood
and 80s. But then I think that's why I was very nervous going into this film, because I loved Creed for all the reasons we've been saying, really. I just thought, how can you actually? Not long before Creed came out, I'd seen Southpaw, and I was like, I love boxing films anyway, and I was like, there's another really good boxing film. You've got Forrest Whitaker as the trainer. This is amazing. Back to high bar of boxing movies. And then, not long after that, I saw Creed and was like, okay, there's that bar. There's another bar that's above that bar. And I just thought. And I was like, you can't, like you said, you can't reboot Rocky. What they're going to do is, and I thought that the idea of being Creed's son at the time was a bit lame.
Yeah.
But then after seeing it, I was like, no, that was a genius move, and everything about it was pitch perfect. But then going to this, as soon as I heard kind of that they were revisiting the Drago story, I thought, oh, okay, I know Dolph Lundgren is big mates with Sylvester Stallone, and but Rocky 4, is that really the place you want to go? Because it's so.
Ending the Cold War.
And just sorry, go on.
As a sidebar, I just need to get this story about Rocky 4. Rocky 4 was probably one of the make that quite clear, one of the greatest moments of my young life.
Right.
Because I went to see Rocky 4. I went to see it, Dave went to see it, and I think 5 of our mates went to see it. We went to see it together. And I always remember it. We watched Apollo Creed get wasted, which we were just like, what the hell? And I would never forget, there's the bit where he kind of has the fight with Drago at the end, and then he hits him and cuts him. Mm-hmm. And then Tony goes, you see, you cut him. You see, he's not a machine, he's a man. And we all 7 of us stood up in the cinema and started cheering. And then the rest, and then you get that montage of the fight scene, don't you? The music's going, dun, 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 dun. And every time Rocky hit him, and then the whole cinema, people were on their feet, going, "Go, get in there, Rocky!" To this day, with probably the exception of Endgame, I've never known a cinema experience like it, where people were just on their feet cheering. Obviously, it's the 80s where we,
the closest thing I've seen to that, it's a slight detour, but it's funny anyway.
Yeah.
Was there's this thing online where people have been watching Game of Thrones, and there's a whole bar full of people, and they recorded their reactions. Have you seen this?
Oh, I think I have, yeah.
So, slight spoiler, but I won't do it too much. But there's Arya's moment, that one moment in the last season, where something's about to happen, and you're watching all their faces, and they're all crapping themselves, and then she does this great thing, and everyone was on their feet, and they were yes, and cheering, and the whole bar just like exploded. That's like that was amazing to see. But yes, I've never actually seen that in a cinema in the UK before.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been to the a film festival in Brussels where you do shout and chant and make jokes. I hated it.
Wow.
I'll be honest. That's the whole thing. And any director whose film is being shown, they have to come on and either sing or rap, or they won't show the film.
Oh God!
Before it starts.
Yeah, I'm out.
And then, but people I'm thinking, yeah, okay. If you've seen a film a few times and you're watching it with mates, talk over it a bit with jokes and little like side gags. But this is a premiere of a film. You're in a full cinema and people are shouting out jokes based on the line someone said, which yes, sometimes are quite funny, but you can't hear them. I don't know. It was a frustrating experience, but never mind. So yeah, sorry, I've just brought the whole mood down. That's what I do.
No, but yeah.
So I went into this.
Go on.
I went into it a bit worried. So two reasons really. One was the fact it was so closely tied to Rocky IV.
Yeah.
And it felt a bit like, yeah, okay, he killed his father. How on earth are you going to make that work?
Yeah.
Without it being either ridiculously serious or brushed under the carpet. And like Ryan Coogler had gone, who was so integral to the first Creed film, writing it, directing it. He moved on to Black Panther, and you had a new director in, you had new writers, or Sly was probably more involved with the writing again. And I just thought, you've got the real risk of it being like Heroes, where you make this amazing thing, and then you go, oh shit, what do we do with it now? Let's make it shit.
It's true. But so in some ways, this film mirrors Rocky 2 and Rocky 3, because in the second, it's in the third one where Rocky is now the rich man with the family and he's got everything, and Clubber kind of is the nobody. But at the same time, in the second one, you've got this, he's trying to take the title, and so this is a kind of mix of the two in some ways. This is all the stuff to do with Rocky 4. This is why I was saying that I don't think going forward it can be anything from what existed before, because he's, as you said, there's more scenes with Donnie now because it's him and his wife and his child. He now has a family that he's fighting for. He now has a career. He now has a name that's his own name that he's earned. Whereas in the first film, it was all about, am I worthy of this name? And it's like, yes, I am. I beat the guy and I beat the other guy. And at the very beginning of this film was the one person that I thought, oh, he's going to be the guy that they do if they do for Creed 3. And in like the first 5 minutes of the film, he has a fight with Wheeler and knocks him out. And I was like, there goes my theory. I was like, oh.
Well, I mean, in many ways, if that whole, if they're done, if Creed 2 had been, the end of Creed 2 had been that fight with Wheeler.
Yeah.
And then Creed 3 had been effectively what we got for Creed 2.
Yeah.
And given how that ended, that's your trilogy done.
Yeah, true.
In my mind, that's a complete story arc you've been given. You could you could quite happily step away from that and go, I've told that character's story. And I think to a certain extent, that would be my worry going forward, that I still feel that character's story's kind of been told.
I think you're right, because I having watched this a second time, I had the same feeling watching Endgame a second time. Was like, you clever bastards. You've taken all these different things that you've planted the seeds of and you've closed them all off, but really in a really deft way. And part of me is like, well, but at first I thought, yeah, okay, because we've been watching Rocky, all our lives, and this is like the 8th film, and we know Donnie's mum and stuff. But I was like, no, I'm having the same feelings about Ivan Drago, Viktor Drago. Donnie and Bianca, and maybe the baby will be the story of the third one. But like every character really, because there's so much weight in this film because you've got the weight. You've got Adrian in the back of your head.
Yep.
There's so many moments that make you think about her on behalf of Rocky. And actually, for Sly Stallone as an actor and a writer, let's not forget his real life son, who played Sage Stallone, who played his son in Rocky 4.
Yeah,
died.
He did.
And there's a picture of him on the fridge at the start.
Yeah,
and it's him. And I'm just thinking, this actor and writer is looking at a picture of a character who was his son, who in the film he's no longer in touch with, and he wants to reconnect with him. But in real life, that's his real son who's died, and he can't do that. And that, I really choked me up. But it's to make a film like in this day and age that has got. My bottom lip was going for about the last 15 minutes, and I've seen it before.
Yeah.
But
I think also as well, they've managed to. Because I think there's a tendency of boxing films to kind of have, you got your good guys, you got your good boxer, you got your bad boxer. That's the one you got to beat because he's not evil, but they've set him up in a particular way. He's the obstacle. But the fact that by the end of the film you weren't rooting for Viktor Drago to win, because obviously it's clear that Creed is he's the guy you're following, but you really felt for him through the film. And in some ways, if they went off now and the next film was called like Drago, or if Creed 3 was more about like, I don't know, Drago sort of says, can you come to Russia and help me train because I want to get back into it, I want to get this fight, and it's all about kind of Creed going over to Russia and helping him, and do you know what I mean? Almost for like another spin-off. I'm all up for that because I think there was did you guys watch the deleted scenes?
Yeah, there are 2 I think they should have left in.
The scene that they have, I can't remember what the other ones. The one that I remember was they're in the locker room at the end, and Creed's kind of talking to Viktor. It's not a massive conversation, but it's enough for him to. It's about them talking about both of the weight that they're carrying from their father's legacies and stuff. And it's like, we got to be more than this. Yeah. And even when he gets up to go and the look that he gives Ivan, because Ivan Drago as he's going, it's almost kind of, it's not necessarily a forgiveness, but it's a kind of like, we just got to let this shit go. And then Rocky gives him the look and stuff. And I thought it was a real shame that scene wasn't left in the film.
Yeah. The other one that the other one that I think they should have left in is when Adonis ends up in the hospital the first time. Rocky's just going out to get some fresh air, and Viktor and Ivan come in, and they start Ivan starts giving Rocky some lip. And he shoves back and he punches Rocky, and then Rocky retaliates and punches him back, and then like a security guard gets in the way of them, and it's like, right. And we've never heard the actual kind of audio of it, but that was, and I was like, that the 2 of them again having one very brief slug out, and I think they trimmed it because it would have made it a bit more about Rocky than about Adonis, so they're keeping it focused on him. That balance, like we said, might have been slightly off. But I think the locker room scene should have been in. Pete, what were you going to say?
I'm not sure. What I quite like, and I don't know, maybe it's just because I quite like the fact that some of these things aren't in, because you don't. I think the moment you just talked about with the locker room at the very end, it's almost like there's some looks in the film, like that great kind of eye acting where they kind of look at each other and they acknowledge each other without saying anything, which I've always been a fan of. And I don't know if I'd want. It's almost, I like the fact that Rocky is kind of found peace now, apart from holding the bag, that he's not having to put his fist back up. And I thought he was quite dignified how he dealt with Drago when he came to the restaurant.
Yeah.
And it's like the whole thing of like, there's no picture of me up there. But like first time watching this, I was a little bit like, this guy killed the guy. And I couldn't get past that. I'll be honest with you, it took a little bit of the shine off the film. I kept thinking, this guy's killed your father. Yep. This guy is unrelentless about the fact he's done it, and he's quite happy if it happens to you. And I think, but then watching it a second time was a bit more, no, this is the role he's been pushed into. He's as much a victim in his own way, and I didn't get that until watching it a second time, because because I was like, you wouldn't ask where your picture is, but he was, because it's his thing. It's my legacy, and everyone else has got a legacy except me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to force my son to be my legacy for me, which is why it's so. Again, the whole. I mean, fathers and sons is a theme on about 5 different levels in this film, because, like you say, there's Duke and his son as well. There's Rocky and his own son, who Creed, I guess, has been a surrogate for. So, and even things like Donnie's relationship with his wife, which is very different from Adrian. She's much more her own person. And then his relationship with his mother as well. That's why it's like there's so much going on in this film that it took a second viewing for me to really kind of pick up.
Aside from the story, one of the things that I loved about the film as well is at no point do you not buy the fact that, I've forgotten his name now, it is Michael B. Jordan, isn't it? Yeah. At no point do you not buy the fact that he's a boxer. Yeah. Because there's that, as I said, that first scene where he's the first training montage bit. There's a bit towards the end of it where he's kind of training with a pad guy.
Yep.
Now I remember when I used to do karate, having to do pad work, and I knew like I'm not great at it, and I think I thought I was fairly decent doing punches, doing kicks, whatever. Watching that sequence that he does, where he's kind of doing the punching with a pad guy, it's phenomenal. It's just. And then you have to sort of think, he's an actor. He's not a boxer.
No.
He's an actor that's trained for that,
And to go alongside that, the flip of that in a way is because over the films, once they got to the 5th one, they started casting boxers as the opponents. Yeah. And in some ways, it made them much more kind of one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Because in fairness to them, they're boxers. It made the boxing really good, but at times you were like, I don't really get a sense of who this person is.
Yeah.
This film, you've cast a boxer who can act his arse off.
Yeah.
He doesn't say very much, but he carries so much weight in, not just literally, he carries so much weight in his performance, the way he looks at people and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think his performance is amazing.
Yeah.
For someone who's not acted very much at all.
Well, it's the same as in the first Creed film. The fact that they got a boxer in for that, but it worked really well, I think. The fact that he's an English boxer, and he's very, very cocky. Or they made the character very cocky. The boxer's called Tony Bellew, playing Conlon, and he's just like a souped up version of himself. He kept saying, "You ain't no Creed, you're a false Creed," and all this kind of stuff, and mouthing off. And then when he gets in the ring, you believe it. But have you seen that story that Michael Jordan told about when they did the first Creed film? They had to get this shot where Conlon hits him, and he goes down and hits the mat. But they had to film. He said, obviously, when we box, we try not to hit each other because, 1, it'll hurt, and 2, you've got to do it a lot of times. You can't have bruises. He said, but at that one, he had to hit me properly at like quarter power and get it on film so that I'd hit the deck. And he said, right, just do it. This is what we'll do, blah, blah, blah. And Tony apparently hit him like pretty, not that bad. And then Michael was like, my head was ringing. I could barely stand up. And it's just like, they ain't messing. This is like a heavyweight dude.
Didn't Dolph Lundgren back in the filming of Rocky IV really hurt Sly Stallone?
Yeah,
didn't he?
I think so.
Accident. And,
because I forget that he's like an ex kickboxing or karate champion himself, isn't he? Before acting, he's another kind of actor, sportsman that's moved into. But it's one of his best performances I think I've ever seen. I've seen a lot of Dolph Lundgren films over the years.
The weight of raising his son, all of this so that he can get back in. The Drago name will be respected again in Russia. He can go home, and then all of that. And of course, we haven't even talked about the big, one of the big cameos, Bridget Nielsen. And that scene in the restaurant and all of that, and just
And I thought the scene at the end as well, where they're at them, it kind of reminds you of Rocky IV, but the scene where she's there watching, and then she's kind of had enough because he's getting the kick in, and then she just gets up and leaves. And you can almost see, it's like what you were saying, Pete, is right, because so much of Viktor's emotion was kind of on his face. You could see that was where he kind of lost the fight. The minute his mum was gone, he was just like, what am I doing this?
And it's a brilliant parallel as well, because Rocky keeps saying you've got to think about who you're fighting for.
Yeah.
And his wife is there. Not only is she there watching him, she walks out and sings his entrance song.
Yeah.
And his mother, who I think in other films wouldn't go because of what happened and stuff, she's right. They're both right up front and center, and it's the psychology of sport and stuff, I suppose. But it's basically he was frightened in the first fight for lots of reasons, because of what happened to his dad, because he knew I think that he was too small, and because the person who gave him confidence didn't think he could do it either.
No.
And he was on his own, and he was totally vulnerable. And so he'd lost that fight before he stepped in the ring. But this fight, again, watching it a second time, just his walkout music and everything, I just thought, yeah, I think you're going to win this. And obviously I knew he was anyway because I'd seen it. But you know what I mean? You actually go, do you know what? It's a different thing. He's on the front foot. And then, for his family to all turn up, and then for Viktor's mother to walk out. But I think the clever thing they did as well, that they didn't, that walking out impacted Ivan as much as it did Viktor, and that's why he could actually be more of a father by the end of the film. Because I think if she'd stayed, I don't think he'd have changed.
No, because he throws in the towel. He says stop, because he wants his son more than he wants anything else. His name and respect that, and the wife and all of that. He doesn't really want that. He just wants his son in one piece.
And also, it was such a nice. Sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to say it was such a nice parallel to what happened in Rocky IV, in the fact that Stallone, and I think even that gets touched on.
Yeah.
The fact that actually Stallone should have thrown, Stallone had to accept with Stallone. I keep saying that. Rocky had to accept some responsibility for the fact that actually he was Apollo's corner man. Fuck what Apollo was saying. He was getting his ass whooped. He should have thrown the towel in, and he didn't.
No.
And that was what cost him his life. That yes, Drago had killed him, but at the same time, at any point, Rocky could have thrown the towel in.
Well, think about the line Rocky says early in the film. He says, that guy broke things in me that ain't never been fixed.
Yeah,
and at the time, I thought he meant physically, but actually it's not.
No.
It's not just physically, it's emotionally. It's everything about him as a person.
Yeah.
I mean,
guys, this is a good film.
I mean, so that moment there, that line where he says that, and also there's a moment in the first Creed film, and these are the moments that make it more than just a boxing film, more than just it carries so much weight. Like the fact that when Donnie first comes in and tells him who he is to the restaurant, he's talking and he says, "Oh, I heard there was a third fight between the two behind closed doors and blah blah blah," and he goes, "Who won?" And all of that little moment where Rocky goes, "Well, he did," and it's like, whoa. So he's been sitting on that for like 20 years, and none of us have known that about the legacy, about the film and the franchise. And he just pulls it out with one line, and it's like, wait a minute, all of that stuff after that point where Rocky's the champion, but Creed beat him, and you're like, whoa. So that moment about Drago breaking things in him, those just transform the film for me.
Yeah.
And I think.
Sorry, go on.
Pete.
No, I was just going to say, I think in less capable hands, some of these parallels could have been really hackneyed.
Yes. Because
they are the obvious things to do in a way. Because there's even a moment like he could have thrown the towel in the first fight with Drago. So there's all these things they're kind of ticking off, but they do it in such a way that is so true to each of the characters that it does work. But I think it could have gone wrong. And another thing I liked, I know again I'm going to mention Endgame again, but I read somewhere that people were complaining that when Iron Man and Cap kind of make up, that they don't really say anything, they just kind of make up, and that I really like that, and it happens here. You've had this moment of Adonis, and you know what it's like, especially with really close friends or family or people that are pseudo family. You can be as angry as you like, but once you're in a room with each other and you look at each other, the love you've got for that person will overtake that anger without anything else happening. It's like a chemical reaction, and you're just okay. And they just kind of look at each other, and they just, very little is said, but they're back to being okay again. And I thought that was brilliant.
So to kind of illustrate that point, I'm going to it's a personal story. I'm sure Dave won't. We're old enough now. There was obviously Dave and I have been best friends for 40 years. And in that time, we've only ever fallen out. When I say fallen out, I mean properly fallen out once. where we didn't speak for we nearly came to blows, and we didn't speak for 6 months.
Wow.
To the point, I don't think I've ever told this story. To the point of we actually couldn't be in the same room. And obviously we had a collection of friends around us, and we couldn't be in the same room together. And one day we kind of, I don't even know whose fault it was. I kind of know what happened. I'm not going to get into that part of it. But I literally turned up one day, and I'd bought the novelization of Razor Lost Ark pretty soon after I saw the film. And it was this dog-eared copy that I always read every year, whatever. And I saw Dave one day, and I don't know why, still don't really know why, but I just gave him the copy. I've never had a copy of it since. It was the only copy I had of it. I just gave him the copy. We didn't shake hands or anything like that. It was no real big apart. Gave him the copy, and that was it. Argument was, that was it. Everything else was forgotten. Mm. So I kind of get that. Do you know what I mean? That sometimes you can have these moments where, you know, the emotions speak for themselves. You don't have to labor it with extra dialogue and blah blah blah, you know. And I think this film did a lot of that in spades.
Yeah. You don't need to spell everything out, and emotion can work, and things can be resolved just with the way people look at each other or act around each other,
or just by putting your hat on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what did you guys think? Because I think it sort of ties into that. But what do you guys think of the boxing promoter? Who was his name was Buddy. So he was the guy at the beginning. He was kind of with the Dragos, and then sort of went and had a little word with Donnie about.
I think he was a bit underutilized. Really, they kind of set him up as something, and I do wonder if there may be deleted scenes that were edited out because. I don't know. He's the catalyst because he wants the money, you know. Mm-hmm. But then he kind of, I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's not his story. Maybe just. But I don't know. I think the fight could have happened without his. You could have done the film without that character at all, to a certain extent. I don't know. What do you think?
See, I quite like. See, first time I saw it, I was kind of like, he hasn't really done a lot, has he? You know. But then I think it's because I'd fallen into the trap of believing I knew how they were going to use this guy, and I thought he was going to turn out to be this sleazy as hell promoter, and he's the guy you want them to kind of punch out at the end. And do you know what I mean? Because you had a similar character who was way over the top in which I think he's supposed to be based on Don King. Who was in Rocky V. Mm-hmm. And I thought they were going to go down that route. And what I quite liked about him was, when you really pin him down, he wasn't really a bad guy or a good guy. He was just an opportunist, and he gave a really good speech to Donnie about where he kind of says, you know, there's been something like 50 or whatever, like heavyweight champions of the world. How many of those do you remember?
Yeah.
You know, and most people remember fight. They remember Ali. They remember, because all of them had a legacy. All of them, you know, like Ali lost his title, came back, had Rumble in the Jungle. You know, so I still remember that. You know, I remember watching things like that. You know, and he said it's about building that legacy because that's what people remember, especially in this day and age where boxing isn't as big a thing.
No.
And if you look now at who's the guy who's just lost all these titles?
Anthony Joshua.
Yeah, who lost it to that the chubby dude.
Ruiz from Mexico.
Mexican Rocky, as he's now being called.
He's the first Mexican heavyweight, I think, in a long time.
So now he's now crafted a legacy. Yep. He's beaten someone that he shouldn't have beaten.
Nope.
Yeah. Right? And they've more or less said that Joshua's will no longer have a legacy as a result of that fight, whatever he does next. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's now kind of defined him to a certain extent. Because what could he do, you know? And I think what's really interesting is when you look at Donnie and you look at I've forgotten his first name now, Viktor.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, that's what they're both. Certainly, Viktor realizes it, or certainly for Ivan, that's what he wants to do. He wants to craft his own legacy. Although what he's really doing is crafting a legacy for his dad. And what Donnie doesn't realize is that's what he needs to do to fully take on that Creed name for himself, to step out. That's the only way he's going to step out of his dad's shadow. He's always going to be Apollo Creed's sort of hand-me-downs unless he's able to craft his own legacy. So in many ways, that's what Viktor's given him, because by the end of that film, everyone's going to remember that the fact that, Viktor kicked his ass, but then he's come back and he's beaten him. Everyone's going to remember that now,
And you almost need to be the underdog in order to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a valid point, actually, because I think you're right. Because it's like, this guy killed someone and he keeps going on about it. And then he basically, like you say, he's like, yeah, okay. It's not very nice, some of the stuff I'm having to say, but there's a reason. It's just building a story. This is how it works.
Yeah.
And like you say, if this had been an 80s film, he'd have been overbearing, and at the end,
exactly.
Rocky would have turned around and knocked him out before he put his hat on.
Yeah, or he would have done some sort of sleazy stuff behind the scenes to kind of pitch them against each other and things like that. And he didn't do that. He just basically did his job.
Yeah.
I did like the training montage, though, in the desert, the second training. I mean, the first one was okay, but it was like you get Rocky in there and the two of them are working it and working the bag and all of that. It was brilliant.
And clever, you got, it's all in the ice in Rocky 4, and now it's all in the heat. Yep. There's nice kind of contrast there. And the whole thing about, get up, kid. And it's like, that's okay. We know at some point he's going to have to get up, but that's, it's beautifully done. And again, the music is, is spot on there.
And in my head, because I'm talking to two fellow writers, I feel that because I've been struggling with my writing sort of this year, I'm kind of hoping someone's just going to rock up and take me to some place where there's just loads of like really hardcore looking writers, and they're going, where are we? It's like, you need to come here to rebuild yourself, and it's somewhere in the middle of the desert, and they just give me a notepad and pencil. I'll go like, well, where's my laptop? You don't need a laptop. Here's a notepad. Here's a pencil. Write. What am I going to write? Anything.
Everything.
While someone's punching you in the gut. Now, right.
You just stood over you shouting, right. Yeah, tell me about it. Oh, but as you say, they've closed off so many things in this film. There's so many callbacks. There's so many nods. There's, the fact that the other big cameo at the end of the film tied into Rocky Balboa. It tied into the first Creed film. There's just so much going on that you just think... when they first announced Creed, as you said, Pete, you thought, really? It's been so long since Balboa, but then it worked. And now after this one, I'm thinking, they're going to have to come up with a really good idea if they want to take this forward. It can't just be, we'll have him face so-and-so. It's like, no. You're going to have to step up and do that original thing of, we've got this twist to make you go, oh, okay, I never saw that coming, and what next if they do it?
And I think that's kind of why, the more I think about it, the more I think one of the twists would be that him and Viktor end up becoming mates and you kind of build that friendship in the same way they built the friendship with Apollo Creed and Rocky.
Yeah.
Not necessarily done in the same way. Not like, he loses and then Viktor comes to help him and all that, but to just find a different way to do it because they've got a lot of stuff in common. And that's what that film shows you. They've got a lot. They've both got, daddy issues. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot going on between the two of them. And I really like that character, Viktor, and I think there's a lot of potential for him.
I would rather they take 5 years than try and just push another one out like in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Don't rush it. Don't rush it. Yeah, well, this is it. It's like if they come up with the right tape. But again, Michael B. Jordan's so busy. I don't think he'd just go, sure, I'll do that just cause. I think it would have to be the right script for him to say, yes, I'll come back.
Yeah. Also Tessa Thompson as well. I mean, she's on the rise, isn't she? So she's going to be busy.
She's got the Valkyrie TV series. She's just done Men in Black International and whatever else is, on her plate at the moment. So she's busy, with all sorts. Oh, Westworld. She was doing Westworld as well.
Oh, yeah, that was it, yeah.
I forgot she'd been in that.
Sorry, Pete, you were going to say something.
Pete.
I can't remember what it was. Sorry. No, going back, I guess, to the closure bits. I guess one, because seeing it a second time, you forget there's like There's the fight itself. There's the father and son. There's him winning. There's Rocky putting his hat on, which signifies he's walking out and he's not, you don't need me anymore, kid, kind of thing. There's him going to his son and, again, not saying what the problem is and not apologising. Literally him just saying, who's this man? Dramatic pause. This is your grandfather, which is enough. And then I was like, oh, yeah, all this and I'm sitting there like nearly blubbering and going, oh, all these emotions. And then you see Adonis at Apollo's grave, which he'd never visited before. Which is a beautiful parallel with the fact that Rocky goes to see Adrian every day, and the fact that it's just like, and he starts talking to him, and it's like, so many. That last 15 minutes takes some beating in terms of how to end a film.
Oh yeah,
and also as well, sort of, because obviously it's a boxing film, so it's action or whatever. There's so many films boxing films. There's always a classic, he gets knocked down. I mean, they did it in the first, he gets knocked down, and is he going to make the count? He's going to make the count. But it's how, what's that thing that's going to spur him to kind of make the count? And I thought what they did in the first in the first Creed film, where he's kind of having these flashes, and then he sees his dad, and there's no big speech from Apollo from beyond the grave. It's just a flash of Apollo, and he's up, And in this one, the visuals, I want to take a moment to just applaud of when he gets knocked down, and it's almost like he's underwater. And in fact, I think there is a song in there called Underwater.
There is, and obviously, when he loses his way a bit, he starts going and training underwater as well.
Yeah. And I just love that everything kind of slows down, and he's and he's out of it, and then he hears like his wife sort of saying to get up, and he does this thing of like he starts pounding the ground. And the music's like, and he's pounding the ground, and then he just gets back up, and that's when I noticed the color scheme changed. I was like, oh, and that's when I was like, shit, it's the whole underwater now. He's come up for air, he's ready to go again. Brilliant. I just thought it was brilliant for that kind of film to have that scene, which we have seen time and time again, and still manage to put a bit of a fresh spin on it. I thought, fair play.
And the boxing itself is like you're there. It is. You almost feel like you punch drunk at the end of the fight yourself, because they take such a and that's what heavyweight boxing is about. They are huge people hitting each other very hard in the face and body. But it feels really, I think, as the films have gone on through the whole series, it just becomes more and more visceral.
That first fight that he loses, Jesus.
It's brutal, absolutely brutal. And he just ends up in the hospital, and he's just wrecked. It's not like, oh, he'll be all right in a little while. It's like, he might not walk again. He might not, he's properly messed up.
And you imagine that you're led there, and you can barely move, barely speak. You're angry with the person who's supposed to support you. You feel completely lost. You feel like a child. And then the news comes on and goes, so what's happened to the champ? Where is he? Why is he quick? Why isn't he fighting again? It's like,
he nearly died, and this is what you're on about.
I know. Because I guess that's the one. That's the thing when you're doing something like that. That's what defines you. And if you're not boxing, then what are you doing? Which is why I like the thing where Bianca suddenly gets why he wants to keep going. And he says, what would you be without your music? How could you live without your music? And then that's the shift in her to think, well, I don't particularly want him to do this because he's going to get hurt. But actually, yes, this is who he is. And if we all believe in him, he's going to do better. It's really clever.
And I think it's something you can understand even if you don't. If you're a creative person, again, I'm talking to creative people, and I'm talking to people who I know struggle in the same way that I struggle. But even when you struggle, even when you don't, when I put down my pen, I say, I can't do this. I've got nothing. I can't think of anything, and it can be years before I pick up a pen or go back to the keyboard. The one thing that I always have to remember is I always end up going back.
Yeah.
Because I kind of think, well, that's what I do. It's like breathing, It's what else would I do, And I think that scene, like you say, it's like, well, what else would I do? It's like you've got your music. What would I do? It's part of me. It's not something that I decide to do. It's a part of who he is, Yep. But I loved just because I love them sort of moments where someone gives you a speech about how tough someone is. He goes to the trainer.
Yeah.
to sort of to ask him to train him, and he goes, I don't know about that. He's like, he's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's this, he's that, and he goes, that's a full balanced breakfast over there. You ready for that? I just love that line. Love that line.
There's a track on the track from that point on the soundtrack is called Balanced Breakfast.
Nice. Very, very nice.
Just was awesome. It's a balanced breakfast over there. You know what? Yeah, I'm good. I've had my Wheaties.
But they've even got the height differences the same. So the height difference between Florian Montagne, who plays Viktor Drago, and Michael B. Jordan is the same as Stallone and Dolph Lundgren.
I think
that's just perfect.
In the way, I think, is it the weigh-in or the announcement bit where I think Ivan turns to him and says, "You're smaller than your dad," because he's more like Rocky's height and build, like you say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Whereas Apollo was a little bit bigger, and then he always goes to hit him. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go, guys. I'm going to go and watch it again, if that's all right.
So, are we about ready to give it some scores then?
I think so.
Okay. Guest, Barry, as the guest, do you want to go first?
What are we scoring out of?
So, 1 to 5. 5 is the max, and no half bags.
That's easy. Can I just give it instead a full balanced breakfast? Creed 2, that's a full balanced breakfast over there. You ready for that? No. For me, it's a 5. It's a 5 because I haven't even talked about stuff that I didn't like in it because it wasn't really anything I didn't like in it. To be honest.
Pete,
I think first time watching it, when I saw it in the cinema, I would have given it a 4, but that is because more on me than the film. That's he killed his. I spent so much time going, but he killed his father. Through the film that I was kind of distracted, and there were so many things on second viewing that I saw that I missed. And obviously watching it in a different way for the show. So no, I think all the cast were great. Like we said, there's all the closure, the action in it was brilliant. I don't think there's anything else you could have done with it apart from that to make it any better. And as I say, any film that gets my bottom lip going for 15 minutes always gets, an extra bag. So yeah, it's a 5 bagger from me too. So
the Rocky franchise is older than me. That's how long it's been around, and I grew up with these films. That the periods that it's gone through in the Cold War and the 80s and the 90s. We've lived through all of these decades, and there wasn't always a film every decade, but it came at kind of key moments in history and in my life over the last 40 plus years. And to have it come back again with Balboa after such a massive gap was a shock, because that was brilliant and it finished it in a satisfying way. He always said he wasn't happy with Rocky V. He wanted to do something better. He wanted to finish it off, and he did, but it took a long time. And then I thought, right, that's it. I'm done. I can relax. I can put it down. And I don't have to think about it anymore. And then Creed comes along, and it changes everything. And you think, well, it can't be good. It can't be any good. It's not going to work. Do I go and see it? And I did, and I loved it. And then we get this one, and it's tied off so many things. It's brought closure to the characters, to many of their storylines, that if they never did another one, I would be satisfied again, as I was when I first saw Rocky Balboa. So little tiny niggles, but there again, nothing worth talking about, nothing I wouldn't want still in there. Even the scenes that I wouldn't mind seeing in there, I understand why they weren't put in. So
yeah,
it's just pitch perfect for me. So also 5 out of 5 for me.
Ooh, that's impressive.
Yeah, the full. Yeah. I think that's it. It's full 5 from a lot of us.
Full 5.
It's full balanced breakfast.
Yeah, from everybody.
I'm just holding out now for Michael B. Jordan to announce he's doing an Action Jackson remake with Carl Weathers as his mentor. That's why I'm on next.
Well, he's busy with Mandalorian, so
That's the only way you can do an Action Jackson. I mean, I love Action Jackson.
The real question is, Barry, are you going to come back for Rambo: Last Blood?
Ooh.
Have you already done Action Jackson?
No.
We haven't done Action Jackson.
I mean, I'll come back for Rambo: Last Blood. I mean, that goes without saying. But you suckers, because I'm now gone 80s. You suckers do Action Jackson, and I'm there. I could pretty much quote most of Action Jackson anyway.
Nice.
Man, you pissed me off.
I haven't seen that for a long time. Have you seen it, Steve?
I don't know, maybe, but it's got to have been decades, really.
I know you're a Sharon Stone completist.
What? Is she in it?
Yeah, I think she's in it. Is she in it?
Yeah, she's in it.
Wow,
Yeah,
well done, Pete. Well done. Action Jackson, 1988.
Just uncrossing my legs. Sorry.
Oh, enough of that. Right, well, okay, so that was Creed 2. Have you seen it? If not, what's wrong with you? We just spoiled it. So let us know what you think. Get in touch with us via email, Facebook, YouTube channel. Leave us a comment. And don't forget to leave us an iTunes review. All right, Pete, thanks for coming on, Barry. Thanks for joining us for this episode.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for
we haven't
having
announced
us.
we haven't announced the next episode.
We haven't decided what it's going to be yet. So,
Well, but I've got a film.
well, you can announce it. You can save it for next one, Pete.
Action Jackson.
Okay.
That's what it is.
All right, Pete, wrap us up.
Thank you for listening, if indeed you still are.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.
You have been listening to Bags of Action. No bullshit. You'd better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.